Don't be conservative. Tell me I got my ass kicked.
You
that's
did.
What I want to hear.
42 points. Do I need to say anything else?
What happened in this game? I don't think Draymond should have been suspended at all.
Are you out of your damn mind? You are out of your damn mind.
Hey, Josh, can you smell?
Really?
Cooking. Back to SmackDown.
And completely stolen Cody Rhodes' WrestleMania moment. This is total. No, you don't get to talk right now.
Oh, really?
No.
You don't get to talk.
No.
I am projecting. That's what I do in the media. You guys are afraid to put your freaking takes out there. Yes, that's what I'm doing.
You, again, just
you don't know how sports media works. This is my job. Welcome back to Championship Rings. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. Brandon Lewis, host of Brandon's World. Josh Ungar to the max, host of the Sports Room Talk Show. Ungar, we both said prior to tonight's show that we felt like this could be one of our best shows in a while. We have so much NFL, college football, NBA to get to.
Yeah, plus we have two big college basketball matchups tipping off tonight. So a lot to going on in the sports world right now.
As always, make sure to check us out on social media. We are live on YouTube at Championship Rings 216. Also, Josh Ungar's YouTube channel, Ungar to the Max. We are live on X at Rings Champion. We're also at Instagram at Rings Champion, Facebook Rings Champion 216. Let's start with the Madden game that apparently took place in real life on Sunday Night Football between the Lions and the Texans. Again, the Houston Texans, Josh, dominated in the first half, pushed Detroit all around the field, and then the second half did not move the ball offensively.
No. Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions, and the Lions still won. Now, you know me. I don't like it when teams use injuries as excuses, but in this case, I think the Houston Texans can use that as a bit of a get-out-of-jail card here, in the sense that they did not have their full complement of weapons. Stephon Diggs out for the season, obviously. Nico Collins was not out there. So would it have been a different story if those two had been available to C.J. Stroud? I think it could have been, but to me, this says more about the Detroit Lions than it does the Houston Texans.
You know, Dan Campbell and that grit that he has brought to Detroit. And, you know, it really started the first part of the second half when Dan Campbell was doing the sideline interview with NBC, and Carlton Davis just gets the interception. Dan Campbell says, I have to have turnovers. The first play of the second half, they get the interception, and away we go. I think there was 4 interceptions total, 2 from each team in that third quarter. Absolutely wild. Now, you could say, obviously, late in the game, there was a missed pass interference call on the third down, which led to Houston punting the football, which led to Detroit, kicking the game-winning field goal and winning the game. But I ultimately agree with you that this Lions team, if you throw 5 interceptions in a game, you should get blown out. And the fact that Detroit was able to bounce back, they got the touchdown to start, and even though they didn't get the 2-point conversion, at 10 points, you felt like at that point the entire momentum was with Detroit, and Collinsworth and Tirico were saying it the whole second half. But I think what people are missing about Houston, and I get it, Nico Collins was incredible the first 4 or 5 games of the year. He had more yards from scrimmage than, guys like A.J. Brown and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson per game, the top receivers in the league. But the Houston Texans have not really been a good offense all season long. C.J. Stroud, in my opinion, has not had one good complete game all season long. And I think this offense is a Joe Mixon or bust offense. That's what it looks like to me. It's looked that way since week 1 against Indianapolis. And quite frankly, missing Diggs, missing Collins or not, the Texans have had this weird sort of mojo about them to me this year. We're like, yeah, they're 6-3. We're not really talking about them because they're in a garbage division, but Houston just has not looked like the Texans team that we both thought they could be going into the year. You picked them to be the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, which it looks like that's going to be Kansas City unless something dramatic changes. We'll talk about the Chiefs later, obviously. But yeah, something just has seemed off with the Texans. I don't know what it is. Maybe part of it is they caught everybody off guard this last season, I should say. And this season, teams were kind of ready for them. Maybe that's it. Like, if
And,
you
and don't get me wrong, Stroud has had moments this year. He made a couple nice throws on Sunday night, but I'm just saying as a collective, I'm not sitting here and I'm saying that he's regressed, but I'm
right,
just saying he has not been. There were some people that thought he was a dark horse MVP candidate going into this year. And, people want to call, some people think that he was a top 5 quarterback entering this league. And me and you went back and forth a lot on Stroud last year. Again, I like him. I just feel like last year, teams, obviously Houston caught everybody by surprise. This year, they were ready for them. And
exactly my point.
they have not made the adjustment on all facets on the offensive side of the ball that they need to. And that includes, by the way, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, who I thought if he had another great year this year, he was going to be in line for a head coaching job.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Do you remember when the Browns kind of came out of nowhere and surprised everyone to make the playoffs in 2020? I know Baker Mayfield ended up getting hurt, and derailed the 2021 season, but it's the same kind of thing in a sense. If you kind of do you kind of get where I'm going with that?
Um, in a sense, but again, those 2 years in 2020 and 2021, I didn't know what was real and what wasn't real. I think the fact there was no fans in the stands really mattered. And then the year after that, we had some with, some had 12,000 fans, some didn't have any. It was just a weird time in football. And Kevin Stefanski came in, obviously, as a rookie head coach. You're right, the same way D'Amico Ryans did. So I don't know.
I
The
see a little bit of a comparison there because, like, Baker Mayfield played pretty well in that first year with under Stefanski in 2020. He didn't light the world on fire like CJ Stroud did last year. I get that. But, like, he still was a big part of the reason why the Browns made the playoffs. I'll say it was more so because of the run game and the defense, but you can throw Baker into the conversation. I'm not trying to discredit him by any stretch.
again, I understand the point of that Stephon Diggs was a big addition and Nico Collins was huge this year, but even throughout the entire year, Tank Dell has been almost non-existent this year for Houston. Joe Mixon, he's been running for 130 yards a game, and they have barely beaten teams, and they were beat pretty soundly by, let's face it, a horrific New York Jets team, and that was on Halloween, and they couldn't move the ball. So I think Houston right now, I mean, they beat Indianapolis, they beat Jacksonville. They're in a terrible division. They're going to win it, but I don't put them anywhere close right now to the likes of Baltimore and Kansas City and Buffalo. Pittsburgh, we'll talk about later.
Yeah. Maybe even the Chargers if you want to include
Yeah, I
them.
was thinking about that today. I said that on Brandon's Road today. If the first round matchup in the AFC, because I think the Texans are almost deadlocked here to be the number 4 seed in the AFC. If that wild card matchup is a Chargers Houston matchup in Houston, I don't know who I'd pick to win that game, but I do think the Chargers match up well against Houston.
I think if that were the wild card matchup right now, I would give the slight edge to the Chargers. Actually, even if it's the Denver Broncos who end up getting the number 5 seed, and go into Houston. I think I would slightly favor the Denver Broncos in that matchup because of that defense.
I want to switch gears quickly before we move on to the Lions side of it because not only did their offense make big plays, but their defense obviously stepped up. They pitched a second half shutout. Now they're getting Zadarius Smith back. I think that was a great thing for the Lions to experience on Sunday. That was a game that for 25, 30 years, Detroit would lose that football game, and they did not. And it's only going to build more character for them moving forward.
That was a masterclass in the second half by Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator.
Well, I don't know about that because Goff threw 2 more interceptions, so I wouldn't call it a masterclass.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, and Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator.
Now, that I agree with you. I do think a little bit we have found somewhat of a formula to knock off the Detroit Lions if there is one. And that is you must take away the running game. You must force Jared Goff to bounce back. And if you blitz and you force Jared Goff off his first reading quickly, he can revert back to occasionally the Jared Goff that we saw at the end of his tenure in Los Angeles and the start of his tenure in Detroit.
Yeah. But you got to have your full complement of weapons if you're going to beat the Lions. We saw that fully on display as well.
Okay. So I want to move on to Thursday night because, oh my God.
Good Lord.
So, okay, let me start with this. Thank you, Jamar Chase, for possibly single-handedly saving my fantasy football season. Let me start there with that incredible performance.
I was facing Jamar Chase in fantasy football, so as soon as I saw what his numbers were, I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm winning this week.
Okay. I want to talk about this decision because I know there were so many topics last week. I know Josh wanted to get this in and talk about the Tampa Bay Kansas City decision that we did not get to. But I think both of these decisions are under the same scenario. Obviously, you're less than 30 seconds to go in the game. The other team has a full complement of timeouts. You're down 1. Do you kick the extra point and play for overtime? Do you go for 2? Tampa Bay chose to kick the field goal. Cincinnati chose to go for 2. They both lost the game. From the Cincinnati perspective, I'll say this. It should not have even come down to this. Cincinnati had the game in control in the third quarter, and a big strip fumble by Baltimore, followed by an 84-yard touchdown to the Ravens' number 4 wide receiver, really opened up the floodgates and made this game as crazy as it is. But when it comes to answering the question on the screen, did Zach Taylor make the right decision going for 2? And I'm not 20/20 hindsight on this. I said it immediately in the moment when they scored the touchdown. No. You do not go for 2 in this situation. And let me explain to you why. Because mathematically, and the implications of you not getting the 2-point conversion, it's not that you can't get the 2-point conversion, and what happens if you don't. So, if the Bengals do go ahead, and, if they call the roughing the passer penalty on the 2-point conversion, if they call the non-holding penalty on the 2-point conversion, and the Bengals get another chance, and by chance they make it, that does not guarantee you win the game. There is still over 30 seconds left in that game, and you're only up by a point, and Baltimore only needs about 20 to 25 yards with a full complement of timeouts in their back pocket for Justin Tucker to kick a field goal, and your defense has not been very good all night. If you kick the extra point, you have a better chance of going to overtime. And again, it coming down to a coin toss where you have an 80% chance, the math says, to get the football, as opposed to if you do not get it in that situation, the way Cincinnati did not get it in that situation, you have no choice. The game is over because you're not recovering an onside kick. The chances are that an earthquake will come in through my house in the next 5 seconds and kill me are better than you recovering an onside kick, in my opinion, at this point in the National Football League. So I would rather kick the extra point, take my chances of going to overtime and at least giving myself a chance, as opposed to if I don't get it, I have no chance at all.
So I totally hear what you're saying. I think your logic is sound. I still think the Bengals made the right decision. I don't think the Buccaneers made the right decision.
See, and I disagree with you there too, because, and let me explain to you why, okay? In
Go
that
ahead.
game specifically, there are 27 seconds left on the clock. And I know everybody's going to say, well, Kansas City didn't get a field goal range, and they did go to overtime, and they did win the coin toss. Okay, again, Tampa goes forward in that situation. If they do not get it in that situation, the game is over. They don't even have a chance to flip a coin, go to overtime, and play defense. If they do get it, there are 27 seconds left on the clock. Kansas City has all 3 timeouts. Your play calling in that situation changes. Your mindset as a football team changes. You go from calling a play on first down that, may get 7-8 yards, and you're like, well, if we break one, okay, maybe we go for the field goal. If we don't, we'll play conservative and go to overtime, because we're not going to go for it on fourth down. If Kansas City was down by a point, their play calling completely changes. They are now in 4 down territory with one of the best kickers in the game. And I can almost guarantee you, if you give Mahomes down by 27 seconds and 3 timeouts, to me, your chances are better losing in regulation than they are losing in overtime.
I hear what you're saying on that. But here's the thing. Tampa had the momentum at that point. If they get the 2-point and they had Kansas City, the 2-time defending champions, on the ropes or on their back heels. So if they had gone for it and gotten it, you put Kansas City in a must-score situation. Now, I get it. It's Mahomes, and we've seen crazy things from him, but Tampa would have had all the momentum. But getting back to the Cincinnati side of it, the reason I think Cincinnati had to go for it is because their defense had shown in that second half, as you were talking about, they couldn't stop Baltimore's offense.
No, but they got more stops. Their defense got more stops than Baltimore's did, especially early in the game. And by the way, a lot of those plays from Baltimore were short fields and bad tackling. Now, I'll give you the last drive. Baltimore did go down and score. Lamar Jackson with an incredible throw to Bateman, and then Andrews, obviously. So they did go down in the last drive. My point is, by the way, and I don't know if many people realize this because I heard this over the weekend on Sunday, and I forget which game it was. But do you realize, and I just looked it up to confirm it, do you know how significantly down the percentage is for the NFL as a whole in 2-point conversion success rate this season?
No.
Okay, let me give you the numbers. Going into this season, the average success rate over the last 7 to 8 years in the National Football League was 55% to convert on a 2-point conversion attempt.
That's a little better than half.
This season, through the first 9 weeks of the year, so this does not count week 10 data, the conversion rate on 2-point conversions was 31%.
Okay.
And they have gone for it at a significantly higher margin. So what I personally think is happening is teams are going more for 2 because kickers are making more 60-yarders. They're actually missing more extra points. They're going for 2 more. Defenses are studying these 2-point plays more. They've seen these 2-point plays all over again, and it's getting harder to convert them.
That I agree with. It's just like a lot of these 2-point conversions are just recycling old plays that you've already run at some point in the game. I agree with that.
So again, knowing that, your chances to me, and again, I would live with, if there's less than 10 seconds left in the game, you go for 2. that decides the game. I'm either going to win it or lose it right here. But Cincinnati, for whatever reason, nobody wants. Why, with 40 seconds left, did they take their last time out? Can someone explain it to me? What were they down at? The 4 or 5 yard line? You could have wasted time there, got it down to like 15 or so seconds, taken your 3 or 4 shots in the end zone, and decided the game right there and went for 2. Then I would have been okay with it. But even if you get it with that much time left, you're exposing yourself now with this new kickoff rule to where the ball is going to probably be at the 30-yard line. And Baltimore with Tucker, I know he's had his struggles this year, but it's still Justin Tucker, needs about 2 first downs to get in field goal range.
Yeah, but again, Cincinnati's defense had shown an inability to stop Lamar in that offense in the second half. So I think part of Cincinnati's mindset was, if you take the lead, don't you think that gives a little bit of confidence to your defense? Like, okay, we have the lead.
No, because you still have to get the stop, where if you don't get it, the game's over. There is no stop. You lost. That's the risk. At least in a tie game, you go, okay, Baltimore's going to be less conservative or less aggressive in a tie game versus if they're losing. The risk to me there is not worth the reward, especially when your season's on the line. For the division at least. If you're 8-2 or 7-2 or whatever, and you want to go for it, okay. But in those situations, both of them, Tampa, their season was pretty much on the line because they're falling apart with injuries. Cincinnati, their division chances are on the line, and they both blew it.
They definitely both blew it. I agree with Cincinnati's decision. Don't agree with Tampa's decision.
All right. Well, oh my God.
Good Lord.
Oh my God, help me. Okay, well, there is good news in Chicago today, ladies and gentlemen, because the worst offensive coordinator outside of Freddie Kitchens and Hugh Jackson, maybe in the history of football, Shane Waldron, has been fired. Matt Eberflus needs to go too, but that's not the here nor there. Hey, Aaron, do you realize that your Jets, after you fired Robert Saleh, who was by far the best defensive coach on your staff, clearly, and after you acquired Davante Adams, do you realize this year the New York Jets have only won 3 games, and 2 of them are on freaking Thursday? Their only win on a Sunday was against the Tennessee Titans in Week 2 when Will Levis went full Levis.
Yeah,
that team's a disaster. The Bears, you could say, you know what? Caleb hasn't been very good, but we're going to get a new coaching staff in here. Hopefully, there's momentum. We can fix this.
Just stop right there. Just stop right there. Because how many times have we heard that same sentiment with the Chicago Bears? We heard it when they drafted Mitchell Trubisky. We heard it when they drafted Justin Fields. Now we're hearing it with Caleb Williams.
By the way, I defended Matt Nagy for years in Chicago. I never understood why he got fired. Do you realize Matt Nagy took Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs twice? And that was with Matthew Stafford and a good Aaron Rodgers in his own division.
Yes.
And Kirk Cousins.
And the only reason they lost one of those playoff games was because of a double doink.
Yeah, indeed. And so now Chicago says, you know what? We got, by the way, their offense, explain this to me, Josh. You upgrade running back. DeAndre Swift, one of the, I would say a top 15 back in the sport. Yeah, he's an upgrade over Khalil Herbert, who they just shipped off to Cincinnati at the trade deadline. Roma Dunze, he was an upgrade, though, coming out of Notre Dame. He was a top 10 pick in the draft, or Washington, excuse me, thank you. He was a top 10 pick in the NFL for a reason. Keenan Allen is maybe the best slot receiver in the NFL, what he did over his career with Phillip Rivers and Justin Herbert. And this offense has gotten worse since last year.
Yeah, think about this. If I remember hearing the stat correctly, the Bears have not scored a touchdown since
it was since the Hail Mary game.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, that game just okay. So this is a sign of good coaching and bad coaching. Good coaching after the Hail Mary. day after the game. First of all, Stevenson, he is cut from the football team. That is not allowed. He's not suspended. He is cut from the football team. You say, boys, this is not tolerated. We're going to go in here. We're going to work hard. We're going to put this behind us. We're going to figure this shit out. We're going to get Caleb Williams more under center. We're going to get the RPO going in the shotgun. We're going to get him short, easy completions. We are going to fix this. You know what the Bears did? They put up 3 points against New England. 3! A field goal. Caleb Williams got sacked 9. Count them. I have 9 fingers. Barely. They fit on all my hands. 9 times. The right tackle is standing there. Cut that guy. Whoever, number 75 on Chicago, cut him. I almost just dropped an F-bomb for the first time ever on this show.
Are you sure you're an Eagles fan?
I'm watching this Bears team going, my freaking God, somebody help Caleb Williams. This is the worst coaching I've ever seen in the history of freaking football. The Chicago Bears were supposed to finally be, I'm not going to use the term I was going to use because, a certain candidate used that in his political cycle this year. But yeah, they were supposed to be really good. Guess what? They stink.
Yeah, I think we both had them making the playoffs. Guess what? That's not happening. Everybody was saying, oh, look at the NFC North. It's the best division in football. Every team looks great. They could get all 4 teams to the playoffs. No. The Vikings might even miss the playoffs at this rate, but
there's them, and then oh my freaking God, where do I start with the New York Football Jets? Aaron Rodgers may have been, I thought going into the year, the biggest quarterback upgrade by any team the whole offseason, going from Zach Wilson to Aaron freaking Rodgers. And Aaron is old. He is slow. Clearly, by the way, Mike Williams, he couldn't catch a ball to save his life with the Jets, and he catches the game-winning touchdown pass from Russell Wilson and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then the Jets, by the way, we both like the Cardinals coming into the year. I didn't expect them to do that. Not 31-6. They scored on their first 5 possessions of the football game. For a Jets defense, this defense is going to lead us. We're a top 5 defense. How are you since Robert Saleh got fired? How about the worst defense in the National Football League because Sauce Gardner looks like he was covered in spaghetti sauce and can't run or cover against anybody. And this entire team is completely trash. They're done. Then put a fork in them. I don't want to hear no more about Aaron Rodgers going to the Pat McAfee show. I started 3-7 before. We may no. That you're done. Your conspiracy theories aren't funny anymore. I don't want you cracking jokes. I don't want Devontae Adams looking over his shoulder. I'm done. This Jets team is a disaster, a complete and utter disaster. It's an embarrassment that I picked this team to win the AFC East because they're an embarrassment. They're worse than the Patriots.
Yeah, think about this. Saleh got fired after that Monday night game against Buffalo. Since then, they've given up 37 to the Steelers, 25 to the Patriots, and now 31 to the Arizona Cardinals. What? And they thought, oh, if we get all of Aaron's friends back together, that'll save us and we'll become the New York Packers. No! That has not worked for you at all. The Jets are cooked. They are dead as a doorknob.
Hey, you know what? At least they're better than the Giants, I guess. By the way, did you know they have the same amount of wins right now as the Carolina bleeping Panthers? I'm serious. As of today, right now, the next year of football, who would you take moving forward? Aaron Rodgers or Bryce Young? I'm taking Bryce Young.
This is pathetic. Um, it's so bad. The Colts Jets game this week got flexed out of
Oh my
Sunday.
God, I don't even. Oh my. By the way, Joe Flacco has not been good for the Colts at all. I don't care what people say about him and how he renaissance Cleveland last year. He has not been good for Indy at all. He's an upgrade over Anthony Richardson because Anthony Richardson can't complete a pass from me to my computer screen 2 feet in front of me.
I don't know what is going on with the Indianapolis Colts, but to answer the question on the screen, who's in a worse position right now? I gotta say the Bears, honestly, because this is a never-ending cycle with them.
Well, I would say the Jets because at least the Bears have a quarterback and a rookie contract. They can try to build it out for the next couple of years. Jets have no plan at quarterback. None. Zilch. Zero.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But my thing with the Bears is like they fired their offensive coordinator. Great. What does that solve?
Well, by the way, Luke Getsy got fired, so clearly it was the right decision to get rid of him because he's also fired in Vegas. So, for the record, I do like the Bears GM. A lot of people want to fire Ryan Poles. I think Poles has actually done a good job. I think it's a good roster. I think they need a freaking coach.
So, the Bears' next game
is at home against Green Bay, which is a very interesting game because Green Bay is coming off their bye, and it's any given Sunday in the National Football League. I'm not picking the Bears by any means, but I'm telling you, it's any given Sunday.
Green Bay is a 6.5-point favorite. Meanwhile, the Jets, like we talked about, they're facing the Colts this weekend. That's going to be a laughable game. Thank God it got flexed out of Sunday Night Football. The Jets are currently a 4-point favorite.
Okay, so while I calm down from my emotional tirade on those two dumpster fires, why don't you give us your other takeaways from Week 10?
So I want to start with that San Francisco-Tampa Bay game because we both had this as in our top 5 last week, and it certainly lived up to it. San Francisco, what are you doing with your field goal kickers? Last year, Jake Moody misses the potential game-winning kick against Cleveland, and they lose against the Browns. And then they go into Tampa. He misses 3 field goals and somehow makes the game-winning one. I don't get it. But in this case, I want to give more credit to Tampa Bay because I think everybody kind of wrote them off after they lost Mike Evans and they lost Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield is still playing very well. They were right there in position to win that game last week against Kansas City, as we talked about. They were right there again against another one of the teams we think is going to be in the mix down the stretch in San Francisco. Tampa Bay's not out of it by any stretch.
Okay, so this is where I sort of disagree with you. I don't think they're out of the NFC wildcard picture yet. I do think they're out of the division hunt because they are essentially 3 games back of Atlanta. They got swept by Atlanta. They're 2 games back, so they're essentially 3 games back. I don't think they're going to be able to make up 3 games. And Tampa's lost 4 in a row. Now, they have been very close games. They lost to Baltimore on that Monday night. Then they lose to San Francisco, obviously. There's a loss in there. They lose to Kansas City on a Monday night. And so for Tampa, something just came up here.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too.
Okay. So it looks like, I'm not sure, sorry for everybody that's listening on YouTube. It looks like that we are potentially not live on the Championship Rings YouTube channel. It says it's a YouTube issue. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But to me, Tampa is a wild card team if they're going to get in. But I think San Francisco has problems. Deebo Samuel trying to fight with Jake Moody was just wrong.
It wasn't with Jake Moody. It was with the long snapper.
With the long snapper. And good for him, by the way, for standing up for himself and fighting back against Deebo. San Francisco has not been the same all year long to me. Purdy is going to have to play perfect. Their defense is not as good as it has been moving forward. And they're probably going to still win the division, in my opinion, because I don't know. Arizona could win it. I think the Rams after last night, I'm going to write them off. That was a horrific performance by the Dolphins. And they play Seattle this week. And I'm sorry. I know you're a Seahawks guy, Josh. I don't buy Seattle. Their defense is just not that good to me. And they haven't really beat good teams. So I think it's a two-horse race in the NFC West. San Francisco obviously has the more talented team, but they're just not as good as they have been in years past.
Yeah. So what are some of your other big takeaways? Because there are a couple interesting games that we didn't get to.
So Sam Darnold is back in a pumpkin watch. I think Minnesota is going to still win enough games to be a wild card team. I don't think they're going to catch Detroit in that division. And my takeaway is if they play San Francisco, I know they've had the Niners number in the past, but if they have to go to San Francisco in the playoffs, which they will likely have to do, it's a 5-4 matchup, they will more than likely lose that game. Atlanta, that was a New Orleans new interim head coach. Usually the first week you get an interim head coach bump. The typical Falcons, you don't know when to trust them. And then obviously Kansas City. Now I don't want to hear any talk about the blocked field goal was luck. That was Kansas City making a play on the blocked field goal and bull rushing Denver's offensive line and actually making the play. They forced that block. It wasn't just a missed kick. So, Kansas City, they are who they are, right? They don't always play great. They have a good defense. Their offense isn't sharp, and they find a way to win games. And now they have a massive game that we'll get to in a few minutes against Buffalo.
Yes, the bullshit is real with the Kansas City Chiefs, whether you like it or not. But how about your Philadelphia Eagles?
Finally, I wasn't even going to bring it up.
Let's do it. Finally, I want to give full credit to your Eagles in this game because I feel like there was so much talk. There's been a ton of talk about Nick Sirianni and whether he should be on the hot seat or not. Like, that's been the talk all season long in Philadelphia, I feel like. And it felt like because Dallas is kind of down in the dumps and Dak is out and I don't even know what's going on with Micah Parsons and that whole thing with Mike McCarthy and all that. It felt like this was a game Philadelphia could just somehow, for lack of a better term, shit the bed and lose.
Well, they tried to in the first half. Jalen Hurts, the interception, I'll give full credit to Trayvon Diggs. I thought that was a great play, the pick on Goddard. Obviously, the fumble was bad on Hurts. In the first half, he stayed in the pocket way too long on some of those throws. But the story to me for the Eagles is not even my offense. It's my defense. Because those two rookies, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the slot, my favorite white corner in the history of white corners, which there are two of them. And yes, I'm going to go there. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell have turned my defense into arguably the past month a top 5 defense in the NFL. And Jalen Carter is starting to get more pressure up front. Josh Sweat is starting to get more pressure up front. Bryce Huff even got one of the strip sacks that Cooper Rush lost. And that game went from a 14-6 sort of nail biter to a complete domination to the point where the entire fourth quarter, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo were literally previewing the Bills-Chiefs game.
Yeah. Did you see the one guy holding up a poster saying, Romo, go in, and they cut to him, and he's pretending to warm up and stuff.
By the way, I think Tony Romo on Sunday would have done a better job than Trey Lance.
Yes.
I think Tony Romo off his chair in the booth would have been a better option for the Cowboys than Cooper, Robert Rush, and Trey Lance.
By the way, Jerry Jones, why'd you build your stadium in the way you did? Like
he says it's a home field advantage.
Jerry, did you kind of forget about that big yellow ball made of gas in the sky? I mean, I'm pointing out the window, but it's nighttime here in Cleveland, but you get my point.
Know why? I'm not even joking here. I'm actually very nervous because I think Dallas is going to tank. And I do think that there is a combination in college football out there
Shador,
in Boulder, Colorado that
Shador
could be.
Sanders and Deion Sanders.
It
Yep.
makes me nervous. Yeah, I want them to win some games here and keep sleepy and tech. I don't want a full tank here.
Okay. I want to get to this game, though. Pittsburgh, Washington. This was a heck of a game. And I, you could debate whether that was a first down or not. It was so close. I don't know. But
It was a bad spot by the officials. I thought the officials gave him a yard back. I thought they should have at least measured.
the yellow line isn't like the official spot.
No, but they moved him like a full yard back. You couldn't even see the chain.
Okay. But Russell Wilson has had a full renaissance since becoming the star for Pittsburgh. And how about Mike Williams?
That's what I just said. Mike Williams cannot catch a ball with the New York Jets.
And he goes, "Oh, there's a touchdown. I'll get it." And it ends up being the game winner.
I still think, and again, Washington is a nice story. There is this factor out there that they have only beaten bottom feeders, which is something. And we're gonna get to the Commanders Thursday night here against Philly. It's a massive game, obviously, but I told you this is what I predicted the Steelers to be. Somewhere between 6-3, 7-2, as we get down to the divisional part of the schedule, which is where, to me, I need to see Pittsburgh beat Baltimore to show me they're still a legit team. Because I still don't think they are legit. Even at 7-2, I don't.
Interesting. So you would not put them in the Super Bowl?
No. Not at all. But I don't think Russ has played great. I think he's made enough throws. He completed 50% of his passes on Sunday. He didn't play great. He made 2 great throws.
Jaylen Warren has re-energized that running game for Pittsburgh. They're getting back to what Steeler football is. Run the hell out of the football and play solid defense and make the plays when it's crunch time. That's what Steeler football is.
All right, Josh, we got to get to this big game. Chiefs, Bills, the CBS crew, the NFL Today will be there in Buffalo on location. This, to me, could essentially be, if Kansas City wins this game, the game that decides the number 1 seed in the AFC. Because if the Chiefs win this game, they would have a 3-game advantage on the Bills, and I believe a 3-game advantage on Baltimore as well for the number 1 seed in the AFC. We know Josh Allen and Buffalo have struggled against the Chiefs in the postseason, but in the regular season, it's been a different story.
Yes, it has. Josh Allen has gotten the better of Mahomes when they've played each other in the regular season. But even if Kansas City loses this game, I still think they would have the inside track towards the number 1 seed. Because you look at the Chiefs' schedule the rest of the way, other than the home game against the Chargers and at Denver, okay, and there's 3 possible games the rest of the way they could lose. Buffalo, Chargers, outside of the Buffalo game, excuse me. If they happen to win this game, that would be Chargers, Broncos, Steelers. That's it.
You know what? I'll throw you a weird one. At Cleveland.
Really?
What if Kansas City wakes up, they're lollygaggling around, it's the Browns. It's the Browns. They're not any good. And that's a game. If Jameis Winston's still in there, Jameis Winston has a good game. The Browns have good players. The Browns are notorious for beating good teams when they stink.
I don't see it.
Wait,
I
never say never. Now they're going to beat the hell out of Carolina because they're at home. But I'm just saying.
It's in Carolina.
Regardless, okay, regardless, they'll still beat the hell out of Carolina. I just think, like, if they just go, you know what, we don't have our best stuff today. The Browns have a good defense. Like, that's a game that if Kevin Stefanski's seat is getting warmer, do they play for Stefanski's job?
Maybe, but let's get back to this game. So, yeah, Mahomes has had Josh Allen's number in the playoffs, but Josh Allen seems to live up to the hype, for lack of a better phrasing, when it comes to the regular season against Mahomes. This game is in Buffalo. We know the implications of it. My question, though, is this the game where not having Stephon Diggs comes back to bite Buffalo?
Well, here's the issue for Buffalo. The rookie receiver that's been very good, Keon Coleman, already ruled out. Dalton Kincaid left the Indianapolis game on Sunday with a knee injury. He is iffy at best to play. Amari Cooper did not play Sunday against Indianapolis with an injury. He is iffy to play at best against Kansas City. So if they don't have all those weapons, then yes, that is a major issue for the Buffalo Bills.
So, and we also talked about this part. If the Chiefs win, they have the head-to-head tiebreakers over the Bills and the Ravens
and they'd be 2 or 3 games clear without the tiebreaker, which adds an additional game of both.
Exactly. So this game is obviously more important to Buffalo than it is to Kansas City because the Chiefs showed they don't need home field advantage to go win a Super Bowl because they went into Buffalo and beat the Bills last year. They went into Baltimore and beat the Ravens, so it doesn't matter to them. So this game is much more important for Buffalo. My question, though, is we saw how Denver was able to create pressure and make Mahomes uncomfortable. And if it wasn't for a blocked field goal, the Broncos would have won that game. Can Buffalo's defense generate that same type of pressure against the Chiefs? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I lean towards no on that. This to me smells like it's a Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins game. This is like, look at our new toy. Your new toy, Buffalo, is not playing. Our new toy is, and we're going to use him.
Yeah. I don't think this is going to be a blowout unless all those receivers for Buffalo that you mentioned don't end up playing. Then I could see it being a blowout. But then again, I don't want to take anything from Josh Allen.
I think this is going to be a little bit more low scoring than some people may think. I think it's like 24-20. I don't think it's like in the high 30s on both sides. Kansas City's defense obviously very good. I keep telling you, they have not gave up 28 points since the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl. Now almost 2 years ago. Buffalo's defense is good too. I am a little bit worried on the Buffalo side. The last few weeks, I don't know if people are paying attention, but all of a sudden, they are getting back to being so Josh Allen reliant, and Josh Allen is starting to turn the football over again.
I think Buffalo is pretty safe in terms of winning their division, though. I don't see the Dolphins getting back.
Yeah, no, they have their division wrapped up. Right now, they're fighting between them and Baltimore, and they obviously lost to Baltimore head-to-head as to who's the 2 and who's the 3 seed.
Yeah. So
now, Baltimore's fighting with Pittsburgh, but again, I think the Ravens are the better football team. I think across the board, they're better than Pittsburgh. So now that doesn't mean Pittsburgh can't win on Sunday.
Spoiler alert, that's my number 1 game on my top 5 because I love that rivalry.
Well, from one big game to the other, let's get to it. This is a massive Thursday night football game. I cannot remember the last time a Commanders-Eagles game actually had huge stakes for both sides. You have the 7-3 Jaden Daniels rookie-led Washington Commanders coming off that massive loss to Pittsburgh in the final seconds where they jumped off sides. against an Eagles team who had 2-2 going into the bye week. Everybody wanted Sirianni fired. Then they barely beat the Browns. And you and Jalen were screaming at me that Nick Sirianni needed to be fired because he was jousting with fans. And ever since that moment, Philadelphia has not lost, and they are getting back to somewhat of a version of the 22 Eagles, which is take a lead early, run the football. Jalen Hurts don't put the ball too much in harm's way, and our defense with our front four is going to generate a big pass rush for an opportunistic secondary.
Yes. I don't know the last time I was this excited about a Thursday night football game.
How about last week?
Okay. I'm a I was at like a 8.5 for last week. I'd say I'm at a solid 9.5 at least for this game. Because Washington feels reinvigorated. They've just been down on their luck for so long because Dan Snyder was just a terrible owner. I don't know what he was doing with that franchise. Now it feels like they have a direction. They know who they are. Like, did they get fortunate with the Hail Mary? Yes, but it feels like they have their franchise quarterback now with Jaden Daniels. They have some nice pieces offensively. I really like their defense. But
obviously the addition of Marshawn Lattimore, I know he was out Sunday. I have not heard yet his status.
I don't know his status for this game, but I do think it's a little bit of an advantage, just a little, the fact that Washington was playing at home on Sunday, so they have a much easier travel schedule, whereas Philadelphia had to travel back from Dallas and come home to Philly. Yes, this game is in Philly on Thursday, but I think that might be a little bit of an advantage for Washington. Maybe I'm pulling at straws here, but that's just a little nugget I'm looking at.
So the one thing about these two teams is the Commanders always play the Eagles like it's their Super Bowl. And it doesn't matter what the record is, these two teams always play close games. I'm expecting it to be another 3-ish point game on Thursday night. This year, Jaden Daniels has been better overall than Jalen Hurts, even though Jalen Hurts has picked it up over the last couple of weeks. I just don't know, Marshawn Lattimore or no Marshawn Lattimore, if the Washington secondary is going to be able to keep up with the weapons that the Philadelphia Eagles have, especially at home on a short week. This to me is really a Eagles offensive line game where I think Washington's offensive line it's better than what it's been in years past. A lot of it has to do with obviously Jaden Daniels' his ability to run. I think makes the offensive line better. I'm interested to see how Dan Quinn and that Commanders defense with their traditional cover one press man coverage handle the likes of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Because the Eagles have faced Dan Quinn's defense is obviously a lot of time dating back to his days in Dallas. Does he go more zone or does he play the way Mike Zimmer played on Sunday, which obviously led to a lot of big plays over the top with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? I think this game will probably come down to who has the ball last. I think Jalen Hurts makes one more last play at home. Maybe the Eagles defense, like I talked about, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, somebody on that back end makes a play. To me, it smells like a 27-24, very close nick and tuck back and forth game.
So my biggest question with this game is how is Jaden Daniels going to handle the atmosphere at Lincoln Financial Field? Because when you play in Philadelphia in prime time, that's a different animal. We've seen how tough it is to go into Philadelphia, regardless of whether it's the Phillies or the Eagles, lesser extent the 76ers, because Ben Simmons was afraid to shoot in Game 7. Yes, I just mentioned Ben Simmons, but you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah, you just gave every Philadelphia fan in America PTSD.
um, so I think that that's why I'm giving the Eagles a slight edge here because they're at home, so they have the home crowd. But hey, NFL, is there any chance we could get this Commanders Eagles on Thanksgiving? And
Oh God, Cowboys Giants. Oh, somebody help America! Thank God, most of the country, whether it's 4 o'clock Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Thank God, most of the country. That's when they eat their dinner or
I,
lunch if you're in the Pacific, because that game might legitimately be the worst Thanksgiving game of all time.
I petition to take the Dallas Cowboys off of Thanksgiving next year because their games are usually clunkers.
Bottom line is, I think obviously Philadelphia, they played one less game than Washington. If they get the victory here, they'll be 2 up on the loss column on the Commanders, which will be big for Philly. Um, and I do think that they're going to meet again. I'll say this: I think the winner of this game probably loses the rematch in Week 16. And I think ultimately, these two will come down to the wire. Again, I think Philly just has better overall players across the board, but we'll see if Jaden Daniels can make a special play. And if he does, Washington can certainly win this game.
So I know you told me that like both division games can't be in prime time because that's a rule the schedule makers seem to abide by. But do you think there's a chance that if Washington and Philly continue to play this like cat and mouse type game for the division for the top of the NFC East, do you think there's a chance that their Week 16 rematch in Washington gets flexed into Sunday Night Football?
So I knew you were going to ask that. And looking at the schedule, I think for sure Tampa and Dallas will be flexed out of Sunday night. I think there's a possibility New Orleans and Green Bay could be flexed out of Monday night.
Okay.
So then the Saturday games they can't flex. The Week 16 slate, Philly and Washington. Maybe they flex Denver and the Chargers. If Seattle is somehow in position, or Miami in the AFC East, if they get back in the playoff hunt, maybe you would flex San Francisco, Miami, and Denver Chargers. Those are the only other two outside of Philly and Washington I could see getting flexed.
Okay. Because Miami has Sunday Night Football the following
Against
week.
Cleveland, but that will be flexed.
Yes.
I have no doubt in my mind. So
Yes. So yeah, I would give the slight edge to Washington to Philly in this game just because they're at home. I don't think Jaden Daniels has experienced a crowd or an atmosphere for that matter like what he's going to experience on Thursday in Philly.
Well, you already mentioned it. Ravens Steelers, outside of those two games that we just previewed, I think we both agree is the biggest game of the week. I think by far everybody universally agrees it's Chiefs Bills, Commanders Eagles, Ravens Steelers are the top 3 games of the week. So, Josh, what I went ahead and did is I threw those 3 games out the window. And despite those 3 games, I've come up with a list of 4 other games that I think are interesting on this week 11 slate. So I'm doing it a little bit backwards this week.
Okay.
So what would be number 4 on my list would be what was flexed in to Sunday night. Bengals, Chargers. I think this is a very fascinating game, especially for Cincinnati. Back-to-back primetime games. Now you are coming off a loss to Baltimore that you desperately needed a win. You're taking on another Harbaugh brother for the 3rd time this year, 2nd week in a row. For the Chargers, this will be a really good test to see how good their defense really is going up against that Cincinnati passing attack. The 5th game on my list, a very interesting one because of the results that happened via Sunday's games. Atlanta at Denver. How do both of these teams bounce back from brutal losses? Atlanta, obviously, to their arch rival, New Orleans, Young Wei Koo missing the field goal. Denver, we know their story about the blocked field goal. Again, I think Denver needs this game more to keep pace in that AFC West wildcard picture. But what we've seen out of Atlanta generally this year is good game, bad game, good game, bad game. Does Kirk Cousins bounce back on Sunday? Two honorable mentions I will give you. One of them is Seattle at San Francisco. For a lack of a better term, I know everybody is bunched up in the NFC West, but I think Seattle's season is on the line, particularly because they've already lost to the Niners and the Rams. They really struggle in divisional play. Can San Francisco get a much needed victory at home to keep their momentum going? And then I'm just going to throw it out there again. I'm not going to get pissed off like I did at the start of the show, but you know what? I'm putting it on there because I'm fascinated by it because I want to see it. Packers Bears. What do the Bears look like with their new offensive coordinator? Is there any semblance of hope in Chicago, or does Green Bay, coming off a bye, just put Bears fans into their misery like that franchise has done during the best, 25, 30 years?
Okay. So I'll tell you this. I did not exclude the two games we discussed off my list, but I understand why you did. But even with that, at number one, I still have Ravens Steelers. This is my favorite rivalry in the NFL. Whenever these two teams play each other, there are usually major implications on the line. This game is no different. Baltimore is 7-3. Pittsburgh is 7-2. The Steelers are starting this gauntlet where they're playing all of their divisional games. They're playing the Ravens this week. Then they have Thursday night football against the Browns. So, that's...
And that's not going to be an easy game for Pittsburgh in Cleveland in prime time. I don't care what the Browns' record is. They will fight against Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And then you have to turn around 2 weeks later and play the Browns again.
And they have Cincinnati in there in between.
Yeah. And then you also have Kansas City, Philadelphia, Baltimore.
So that's why I kept saying, this is not easy. This, to me, this is the start of where we're going to see if the Steelers are for real or not.
And that's part of the reason why I have this game number one, because of the back half of the Steelers schedule, as we were just highlighting. But again, I just love this rivalry in general. They've met in the 2008 AFC Championship game. They've met in the playoffs. They've met, with the division on the line. We all remember the immaculate reception that Antonio Brown had before he went all bonkers. So I just love this.
We all remember the game where Ray Lewis broke, or I think it was Terrell Suggs broke Big Ben's nose.
Yes.
So yeah, though I will say this: I don't know if you know this. Do you know Lamar has only beaten Pittsburgh one time?
Really?
Now, he has not played a lot. He's had injuries. There was the COVID year. Lamar, unfortunately for the Ravens, the only thing that stops them are the Chiefs and Lamar Jackson's immune system.
And I remember the game last year in Pittsburgh where the Ravens receivers couldn't hold on to the football, and the Steelers won that game. So.
That was the game. Do you remember the offensive coordinator Matt Canada didn't call the play, and Kenny Pickett just didn't audible and threw a bomb down the sideline to Pickens?
So I can't wait for this game. Coincidentally, I'm going to be coming back from Pittsburgh on Sunday, when the day of this game, because I'm going to the Penguins Sharks game on Saturday night with a couple buddies. So that's going to be fun. But at number two, that's where I have Chiefs Bills. We already talked about it. I don't need to go in depth there. Number three, I've got Commanders Eagles. Again, we already talked about it. Don't need to go into depth there. Number four, I got to agree with you about this Falcons Broncos game, because I picked the Broncos to make the playoffs. You did not. I think Denver, even with the loss, they can still they're still in position to make the playoffs. The division's out of the question. We understand that. But Denver, I think this game's a little more important for Denver.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's way
Yeah.
more important to Denver than it is to Atlanta. Because if Denver loses, if Cincinnati beats the Chargers, don't look now, but Denver, like this to me, this could be the swing game if Denver makes it or not.
Yeah. Because Denver, they've got the Browns on Monday Night Football in a couple weeks. I forget who they play in between there. I'd have to look. But they've got the Falcons this week. Then they've got, I think they're at the Raiders next week. So they could win that game. But if they can win this game against the Falcons, win next week in Vegas, and then come back and win Monday night against the Browns, you're in prime position. I could actually see that game on December 22nd between the Broncos and Chargers getting flexed into Sunday Night Football. I think that was one you mentioned earlier as a possibility. And then number 5, the game that should have been Sunday Night Football from the beginning. I have no idea why Colts-Jets was Sunday night. Anyway, Bengals-Chargers. How did the Bengals bounce back from that game on Thursday? You got the Chargers, what? They've won 2 in a row now? Or
No, 3 in a row, I believe.
3 in a row?
Cleveland, Tennessee, and I believe they got one more.
Yeah, the Saints.
Yes.
You're right. So they've won 3 in a row. They're on a roll. There's what? 6?
But again, you can make an argument. Are those 3 of the worst 5 teams in football?
Yes. Yes. So they're definitely stepping up in weight class, especially next week because they got Baltimore on Monday Night Football. Oh, I can't wait for that game.
Horrible.
Yes, but we agree essentially on the same games, but I have Ravens Chiefs number 1 just because I love that rivalry.
You mean Ravens Steelers?
Yes, Ravens Steelers, correct.
All right, well, quickly here, Josh, what is the landscape of college football? Because Georgia got their ass handed to them by Ole Miss, to be frank. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think there's a great team in college football. From what I've watched and from what I saw, I think every team, this is NFL-like, where every team has a flaw.
Yeah, I think that the 12-team playoff has certainly helped that. And I don't think it's devalued the importance of these games. If nothing else, I think it's increased the value of some of these games.
Well, a little bit, because if we're in a 14 playoff or even a 6, Georgia loses that game to Ole Miss, they're not even in playoff contention.
Right. I mean, if it were up to me, Georgia would drop probably out of the top 10 after this loss. But I don't think the CFP committee is going to do that because they love Georgia for some reason.
Well, again, if you told me Georgia and BYU played right now, I'm taking Georgia.
Oh, yeah. BYU probably shouldn't have won that game against Utah on Saturday. But
yeah. So it's very weird the way they're doing the seeding now, because the top 4 seeds, like BYU, is not obviously better than, Tennessee or what have you, but they're ranked higher because they're going to be a conference champion.
Right. Yeah, they're going to be ranked 9, but they would be number 4 in the playoff because it's the top 4 champions. Conference champions get a bye. I don't know what's happening with the ACC right now after Miami lost to Georgia Tech. I just don't know with that situation.
I mean, it's Miami and Clemson.
Yeah. What about SMU? Okay. But Alabama just put a whooping on LSU. So LSU's done.
Yeah, this was kind of a disappointing weekend in college football. Like, there really wasn't a close game. that matter of significance.
I agree with you there. Okay. Ohio State, Indiana. The game time got announced for this.
Oh, this is a big conversation on the internet today.
I hate this. This is going to be one of the biggest games of the season, and you're putting it at noon. Why? Stop this.
Okay,
This should
so
be on in prime time with Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit on the call. By the way, sending our positive vibes and thoughts and prayers to Kirk Herbstreit and his family after the loss of their dog Ben. He was a staple on College game day. I know how hard that is to lose a pet. I've had to go through it
the
3 times.
arguably next to losing, a relative, it's the hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Again, I'm not defending anybody here. I'm just gonna tell you, I thought Joe Klatt yesterday went on X and gave the best explanation he possibly could for why this game is not in prime time, why big noon kickoff is the way it is. And again, he works for Fox. You're going to say expected, yeah. But his explanation, I thought, actually should have calmed some people down. And I actually think it makes sense. So when it comes down to it, and this is true, the Big Ten, we all know, we talked about it, the Big Ten does have a media rights deal. They have it with Fox for Big Noon, they have it with CBS for the 3:30 game, and they have it with NBC for the 7 o'clock game. In the off season, the three media partners, NBC, Fox, CBS, they did a draft. Now, networks can protect games. One of the games that actually got flexed out of Big Noon in a primetime was the Ohio State Oregon game. That was originally a Fox game. Fox gave that up to, I believe it was Michigan and Oregon they kept, which was a bad decision.
No, CBS had Michigan, Oregon.
Okay, well, it was a Michigan game. I don't remember exactly which Big Noon game it was that they wanted to keep Michigan. I know it wasn't Ohio State because that was already protected. But essentially, they have all these media rights deals. And for games that, were not decided before the year or games that need to be moved up or what have you, Fox has the first pick because they have the most rights to the Big Ten. And again, and I said this a couple weeks ago, and I get it. I know you guys all want prime time, and I completely understand it, but there's two factors here. Number one is the ABC and Herbstreit and Fowler and all that, they no longer have Big Ten rights at all, period. They only have SEC rights. So if the game was going to be on prime time, it would not be on ABC. It would have to go to NBC.
Which I would have been fine with. Trust me, I understand that, like, Fowler and Herbstreit could not have called this game. But you generally, my feeling is, if Fowler and Herbstreit are calling the game, you know it's a big-time matchup. Like, there's a reason they're going to be calling Tennessee, Georgia this coming Saturday. There's a reason.
I feel the same way, though, about Gus and Joel and Noah Eagle and Todd Blackett. Like, they're just the other team on that other network. Like, I think college football has three really great broadcast booths, just the way the NFL does.
So I agree with you about NBC and ABC, not so much about Fox. Gus Johnson can drive me crazy when he has an Ohio State game because it seems like he's very favorable towards Ohio State, and it drives me nuts.
Well, he did not sound that way against Penn State. He didn't sound that way against Purdue, and I don't blame that Purdue game wasn't even a contest. But the other thing here is the ratings do show, for whatever reason, that the Big Noon game is the most viewed game in the college football week every week, regardless of matchup.
I mean, you know my feelings. I still like College Game Day better. And that's partially because I love the headgear pick at the end. I always have, always will.
No, I'm not talking about Big Noon kickoff. I'm talking about the Big Noon game itself.
No, I know. But I feel like you have to include Big Noon Kickoff in there because that's like the pregame show for the big
Yeah,
noon.
but game day is more watched by many people.
Yeah, but in terms of this, Indiana, Ohio State, it's most likely going to be a top 10 matchup. So at best, I would have loved it to be at 3:30 with Brad Nessler and I forget the
Gary
CFC
Anderson.
Gary Anderson on the call, or Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. Sorry, not Fox.
So I still think Oregon is going to be the number one team in the country, but I don't think they are the number one team in the country.
I agree. Oregon is going to be number one. I do think they're the number one team, but not by a wide margin. We saw how that game played out in Eugene a few weeks ago when Oregon barely beat Ohio State. It looks like they're on a collision course to meet again in the Big Ten championship. How's it going to play when they meet on a neutral field in Indianapolis? I think it's going to be a different game. I still think I would give the slight edge to Oregon.
And by the way, they could play on the neutral field again in the CFP.
That is true.
So, all right, Josh, let's talk about the surprise of the NBA, the 12-0, undisputed, in my opinion, best team in basketball, the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I don't care who out there is listening. J.P. Bickerstaff deserves to go to jail for what he did to this team the last few years. J.P. Bickerstaff had me thinking that Darius Garland was washed, that Evan Mobley wasn't tough, this team was garbage. What a change of coach and philosophy does for a basketball team. This Cavs team went from having like no bench to having about 10 guys that could play, and they can all shoot the ball, and they're physical, and they rebound, and they play good defense. And my favorite part about it is this: they are taking a Boston Celtic Golden State-esque model to the current NBA. We're going to shoot 50 threes a game, and if we go 20 for 50 every single game, we're going to beat you. And if 10 of our guys just make 1 or 2 threes a game, we're probably going to beat you. This is not a fluke. I don't care who they played. They just got done whooping Golden State. That game could have been by 60 if they tried in the second half.
Yeah.
This team is for real. They are legit, and I'm here to stay right now. I don't care if it's November. This Cavs team is here to stay. And I will say this right here today as we sit here. I don't care if it's November 12, 2024. Barring a legitimate bad injury to one of the Cavs' major key contributors, if they do not get at least a top 2, I'm not going to say number 1 because Boston's still there, but if they don't get a top 2 seed in the East, that's a collapse.
Yeah. I mean, given the state of Milwaukee and Philadelphia, we'll get into Philadelphia a bit later. Because, I'll just mention it right now. We're playing the 76ers tomorrow night in Philadelphia. The Sixers are playing right now as we speak. They're hosting the New York Knicks. Joel Embiid is back tonight. We'll see if he plays tomorrow. On the road to this Boston game next Tuesday, if we're going to stay undefeated, tomorrow night's game in Philadelphia is the one I'm most nervous about. I know they don't have Tyrese Maxey. Again, Joel Embiid is iffy because he said he's not going to play back-to-backs. But it's still the 76ers in Philadelphia. They usually play us very tough. We saw what happened against them last season in Cleveland when Buddy Hield shot the lights out and they came into our gym and beat us. I'm very nervous about tomorrow night's game in Philadelphia.
I'm not nervous at all because we're just the better basketball team.
On paper, yes. But again, I'm just like, Philadelphia has given us problems in the past.
Yeah, but I don't think Embiid's going to play.
And that will definitely make a big factor. But again, we've seen how well the Sixers have shot the ball against us in the past. Now, again,
But that was mostly with them beat on the court.
wasn't the game? There was a game last season they came into Cleveland and beat us.
But they also had Tyrese Maxey on the court, which is a big issue for them that they don't have.
That is true. So, if they're able to get through this game tomorrow night in Philadelphia, I think we're headed for a massive showdown next Tuesday in Boston.
Which is an NBA Cup game. And may I be the first one to say, that's what I hope we lose. Because I want nothing to do with this NBA Cup. I'll say it right here, right now. I don't want us in it. I want us to have a week off. I don't care. It means nothing. It's a waste of time. I want nothing to do with this ridiculous, stupid in-season tournament where they paint the courts and everybody acts like it's a big deal. It's stupid.
You know we're probably going to get in there because aside from Boston, we have Chicago, Washington, and Atlanta in our
Washington.
group. Yeah. Yeah.
I want nothing to do with that stupid NBA Cup. If we win it, you know what I'll say? Take that stupid trophy and throw it in the garbage. Because it means absolutely nothing. Who won the NBA Cup last year? The Lakers. Did they win a single playoff game? The answer is no. They got Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic.
Okay, so if the Cavs are able to get through that Boston game still with one loss, or with undefeated, there's this potential they could coast through November undefeated. Because following tomorrow night's game, they've got Philadelphia in Philly tomorrow, Chicago on Friday, Charlotte on Sunday, Boston in Boston on Tuesday, back-to-back against New Orleans on Wednesday, Toronto at home on Sunday, and then a home-and-home against Atlanta on Wednesday.
Yeah, if they get by Boston, assuming they'll beat Philly tomorrow night, they could be flirting with that Golden State Warrior, 15-16, 24-0 start. I'm serious when I say this. I don't think they're going to go 73-9, but could they go 69-13, 68-14? Like, I think this team is that good. I think they have as many players as Boston. We would have said going into that series last year, the Cavs could give Boston a fight. We just literally were watching the worst coach. How many times did I come on here last year in the spring, Josh, and tell you we were the worst coach basketball team of all time? I didn't think Kenny Atkinson was going to make this big of a philosophy change offensively. I was wrong, and it's freaking beautiful.
You know what's interesting, too, is their rookie, Jalen Tyson, has barely played.
He doesn't even need to play.
No.
My guy, Sam Merrill, you know what they say? White guys can't shoot. You know what Sam Merrill says? Yes, I can.
So here's my question. What do you do when Max Strus comes back? Do you put him back in the starting lineup?
Right. Because I trust him more than Okoro. So I would say yes. And you let Okoro be that defensive piece in that second unit? Because I think LeVert has excelled off the bench.
Or do you, like what we were doing before he had to leave with an illness, do you put Dean Wade back in that starting lineup?
You could. I think the beautiful thing is right now it doesn't matter. I think we have such interchangeable parts, and these guys are making shots again. All they got to do is make two threes a game. That's what Boston did last year. That's the math. 10 guys make 2 threes. Everybody goes, 2 for free or whatever. You go 20 for 50. You're 40% of the night. That's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you make 20 threes a night, you're at 60 points right there just on threes. You figure you're going to get 40 points from layup just by shooting in a layup once. That's how you get to 100 points.
Right. So, I think it should not have been that close on Saturday against Brooklyn.
Well, that was because, we were coming off a back-to-back. Shots weren't falling. And there is going to be that scenario. There's going to be like 4 or 5 games this year where the Cavs are just going to get blown up by 50. because they're not going to shoot well. It's going to be a bad night. They're not going to play defense like we saw from Boston a couple of times late in the year last year. But it's not going to be concerning to me.
Yeah. But my thing with them is they're playing well offensively. Defense at times has me a little concerned because
But that's okay because we don't need to have a great defensive team until the playoffs. We still have those deep. You could see the defense turning on late in games to get stops, even get back in that Brooklyn game.
Oh yeah, I mean there were some key defensive stops in those two Milwaukee games. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, did you think Boston had a great defense? Their defense was good. I didn't think their defense was great. Indiana lit them up. What they beat Indiana 4 games because they outshot Indiana.
Yeah, which I wouldn't just dismiss the Pacers. I think they're still going to be a factor in the East. But think about this. Right now, the Celtics and the Cavs are the only 2 teams above 500 in the Eastern Conference.
That's wild. Well, I do want to get to this topic quickly before we got to get out of here. Expectations. Klay Thompson returns tonight for Golden State.
Yes, I am very excited about this game. From what I understand, the Warriors are doing like a big giveaway, like a Captain Klay.
As they should, obviously.
Yeah. He's going to get a statue outside Chase Center. He'll get his jersey retired. He's saying like it's just another game. It's the NBA Cup. Dude, this is not just another game. Like, they probably should have traded him last year. You could tell they were headed for a breakup given the way it was going last season.
We had a big debate about that.
Yeah. We had a whole discussion about this, and Jalen and I will never see eye to eye about Klay. You know my feelings about what type of player he was before his surgeries.
Oh, in his prime, yeah, he was absolutely unbelievable. Me and you disagree about what he was after that.
Yeah. He was my favorite player on the Warriors. So I'm so excited for this game. I'm wondering if the Mavericks are going to make like a concerted effort to get him the ball early to kind of get him going.
Yeah, the problem for me is that this game was like later in the week, or later in the year, sort of a standalone, like a Saturday night ABC game. Maybe I'd get more into it. The fact that it's so early in the season, and like Golden State's a nice story to start the year. I don't know if they're going to be sustainable.
I think it's very sustainable for the Warriors.
It very well could be. I'm still a little bit worried that I think they're just too Steph dependent. I don't know. It's like Klay's coming back. Like for me, Klay hasn't been the same player the last few years, so it's nice, but it's not I gotta run to the TV to see it for me.
Oh, it's totally the opposite for me. Like it is where's my favorite spot on the couch? I gotta watch this game.
And with that, we're going to wrap up tonight's edition of Championship Rings. Thank you guys so much for listening. That was one of our best shows in a while, I think undisputably.
100%, yes.
So we will see you guys next week as we get closer to Thanksgiving, breaking down all things NFL, college football, NBA, and more. We'll see you guys next week. As always, make sure to stay subscribed to us on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook. Thank you for listening to Championship Rings.